Comenzamos febrero, bienvenido 2024 y el mes de febrero, que sea un mes muy bonito para ti y que sea un mes muy bonito para mí y lleno de muchos videos para reaccionar y comentar y muchos juegos que probar este año. Y trabajo, que Bunker Films pasó por una etapa difícil, pero ya nos estamos recuperando. Te tengo noticias más adelante en siguientes videos. Chao, chao, chao. Tengo una nueva meta para este año y es, por lo menos, ahora sí, subir un video a la semana. Por lo menos un video a la semana. Quiero hacer por lo menos video reacting o reaccionar a videos. Les dejo con este muy bonito. Que ya vieron la miniatura y el título de qué se trata. Chao. Uno de los momentos que más he estado esperando del año. Al fin llegó. Bueno, esto iría... Ya, es que necesito grabar esto. Ya, con esto hacemos... Traca. Uno de los momentos que más he estado esperando en el año es que por fin Marques Brownie pruebe las Apple Vision. No sé si esto es de su experiencia probándolas en el teaser o es que ya las tiene. Ya lo publicó ayer y vamos a ver. Bueno, ya me había estresado, pero ahora sí ya está. Vamos a ver.
All right, so you've seen the unboxing. Now it's time for the breakdown.
Estaba diciendo que se nota
What
que son
is
las
using the Apple
los
Vision
oficiales.
Pro actually like?
Ni siquiera les he quitado el plástico o se mira así. No creo que se mire feo.
This is easily one of Apple's craziest, most radical, possibly
Claro que sí.
dystopian products
Sí es.
of all time, and I have a lot of thoughts here. Like I've been
Se ven las cámaras.
dystopian products of all time, and I have a
Se ven las cámaras aquí abajo. Sus ojos.
lot of thoughts here. Like I've been using it for about a week now. There are some parts of
Una
this thing that
semana
are
llevo
absolutely
usándolos.
incredible, and some other
Ahí
parts that
aumentó
feel
la inmersión.
weird or borderline unfinished. There are all kinds of new technologies, from a new operating system to infrared eye tracking to virtually reconstructed versions of you. I feel like there are so many actually new things that you have to understand in order to get a sense of what this headset actually
Y estoy viendo este video mientras actualizo la Mac. Quedan 26 minutos y de video son
and what it does. So
37.
I'm going to break this down into two parts. This video is all about using the Vision Pro. It's everything I've learned from the past week of wearing and getting used to this thing every single day. But I'm also working on a more wide-ranging, possibly more existential review video. But let's just start with the more hardware fundamentals, right? Like, what is this thing that I'm holding, literally?
Ajá, esto es solo
Vision
acerca del
Pro,
uso.
at its core, well, it is
Experiencia
a
de
VR
usuario,
headset.
como le
Now,
decimos aquí,
Apple
¿no?
would never say that, and they probably won't like that I'm saying that word. You know, I made an entire
Tan
video about
grandes.
why they refuse to use those words, and they're
No
calling it
son
spatial
como
computing
las imaginaba.
instead.
Spatial
We'll
computing.
get there. But the truth is, it's a really, really, really high-end virtual reality headset. It's something we've seen before, right? It's got displays and lenses and speakers and fans and buttons, and this is a form factor. This is a thing that we have seen before. But before I even turn this thing on, there are clearly several things that are a little different about this one. So first of all, it's made of metal. Lots of metal and glass here, which are high quality but heavy materials, relatively
Yo imagino
speaking.
que va a
So
ser el mismo
there's
metal
this
que usan en las
precisely
Macs.
machined aluminum frame around the outside.
Ajá,
And
sí,
yes,
es
those
aluminio.
are intakes for fans at the bottom, and then vents for those fans at the top. On the right side, there's your digital crown that can be pressed in
Como
or
el
turned.
Apple Watch.
And then on the other side is just a single larger button. So kind of basically the same two buttons as an Apple Watch. And then when you get a little further back on this band here, these little pods with downward facing grills, these are speakers, which are pointed straight at your ears and work surprisingly well. Though, of course, it also means that people around you can hear a little bit of what you're hearing. There's a little bit of bleed. And I have a lot to say about spatial audio, so stay tuned for that. But the main event is at the front. There's an enormous piece of glass, which, yes, is very easy to fingerprint and smudge. And then behind that thing, there's this outward-facing OLED display and a bunch of sensors all the way around, outside-facing sensors that go forward, sideways, and straight down. And there's depth sensors, infrared illuminators, LiDAR scanners, and just regular old RGB cameras, all being processed by an M2 chip and an R1 chip inside this thing. And then maybe the craziest part, inside the headset, there are a bunch more sensors facing your eyes, tracking your eyes in real time for all the eye control and everything that comes with that. And also then to display a representation of your eyes on the outside of the headset, kind of We'll get there. But overall, when you put it all together, you get a very well-made, very high-end, but
Pero eso ya lo
also
sabemos,
pretty heavy
Marque.
computer to wear on your face. So officially, this
Sí,
headset
pues
with
esta es,
this
esta es la
solo knit
parte de la
band, when I weighed
presentación del
it,
producto.
showed up as 638 grams, which some of you
Bueno,
on
esto
Twitter
sí
have
no lo habían
already
dicho.
pointed out is actually slightly less than the plastic
150
Meta
gramos.
Quest Pro. But that Quest Pro also has a lot
No
of
sabría decir
battery
si es
on the
pesado o
back
no.
of your head as a sort of a counterbalance. So the weight distribution is very different. Also, the Quest Pro is not that comfortable anyway. But the point is, this, for Apple, made the choice of taking the battery off of the headset,
power
which
bank.
means, okay, now there's nothing on the back of your head, so you can wear it and lean up against things, and that might be an upside, but that also now means you have to deal with this cable all the time running up to your head, and the fact that it's very front weighted now. All of the weight is on the front of your
Para
face.
mí fue una
So
buena
this is the
decisión tener
battery,
la batería
as you saw in the
afuera y
unboxing.
no
If you
en
haven't already
el
seen the unboxing,
dispositivo.
that just went up. I'll link it below the like button. But this battery is a surprisingly small 3,366 milliamp hours. I say surprisingly small because a normal battery bank of this size, you might expect to be 10, 15, 20,000 milliamp hours. I suspect there's a lot of heat insulation happening here, but it comes with a non-removable 4-foot cable and a proprietary connector at the
Yo
end of the
tengo este
cable
que lo he usado
that will
casi por
twist and
10
lock to the
años
headset. And so the lock is really solid.
y
It
este es
makes
de
sense that it's not just straight
13,400.
USB that could get disconnected easily. Once you connect it, it starts glowing and then it starts booting up, and there's even a little Apple logo that displays on the outside screen while it takes a little under a minute to turn on. So there is no on or off button or switch anywhere on this headset, maybe kind of like AirPods
hay
Max, something like that.
subtítulos.
So if you ever
Yo
take
estoy
the
a
headset
escucharlo,
off
no estoy
and put it
leyendo.
down, it will enter a standby mode after some time, but it won't turn off. If you want to turn it off, you literally have to twist and unplug the cable. That's the only way to actually turn the headset off. Now, famously already, the battery life with this included battery is not super long on this headset.
Eso me interesa.
2 to 4 hours is actually realistic for what you can expect for just like this built-in battery. But that's also kind of right in line with a lot of other VR headsets. Battery life on VR headsets is not
editando un video, esto me lo acabo en 20 minutos.
great in general. If you do want to use it longer, the only way to do that is there's a USB-C port on the battery, and you have to plug the battery in. So you could plug the battery into the wall for infinite battery life, or I guess you could plug it into like you could daisy chain another battery into the other pocket or something for even longer life, but yeah, 2 to 4 hours. Now, at first, it seemed weird to me.
Un power bank que saque a tipo C y que alimente esa otra
The port
batería.
is on the same side of the battery as the non-removable
power
cable,
bank
but I
para
think
el
it's because
power
they
bank
just want you to
de las
default
Vision
to
Pro.
putting this battery like in your pocket, probably in your back pocket. So even if it's plugged into the wall, it can still be in your back pocket. You're just going to want to get a longer USB-C cable. So there are no controllers that come with this headset. Now, it does support other input methods that are like game controllers and mouse and keyboard, and those can be incredibly useful. But by default, the primary input method for everyone using the Vision Pro is your eyes and your hands. So the first time you put on this headset, it goes through this calibration process, and it's pretty interesting. So the first time you ever put it on, it first adjusts the distance between the lenses, physically moving them inside the headset to match the distance between your eyes. Then it does this sort of a hand scan, so it understands your hands. And then you go through this process of basically looking at a bunch of dots all the way around the screen and then tapping your fingers together to select them. Kind of feels like an eye test or something. And then you're in. So first thing you're going to notice is you can actually kind of put your hands anywhere as long as the headset can see this. Just your fingers touching together. So there's a lot of pictures of people like using the headset with their fingers like out in front of them, pinching like that. But you actually don't have to do that. It's such a wide angle because
Yo hago
the
mucho
sensor is
esto
facing forward and
normalmente.
sideways and
Creo que voy a
down.
tener
You
problemas.
can kind of
Como que
just
si vas fuera a
rest your
comprar
hand
o
anywhere in front of you, in your lap. As long as you pinch like that, it can generally pick it up, which is impressive. So you're pinching to control anywhere in that 180-degree bubble in front of you. And then the digital crown, you hit that once, and the app drawer comes up. Pretty simple. Doesn't seem that impressive, but this is actually a peek at the first really impressive thing about this headset to me, which is it seems to have incredible spatial positioning lock. And like, it's really hard to show, like, have you appreciate this through a YouTube video. Reviewing VR headsets is hard, but like turn around in the room you're in and like picture a wall or a window just appearing locked in place in 3D space in your room. And no matter how much you move your head or move around, it stays exactly kind of floating where it's supposed to be. But when I say floating, I think you're picturing like a soft float, but it's locked. And that's how it starts. So now you're in Apple's new Vision OS. I would describe this
A ver,
as
un
kind of
nuevo
similar
sistema
to
operativo para
iPad
enseñarle a
OS,
mis
but
alumnos.
way more glassy and like, of course, with the extra
Como,
dimension of
como dijeron,
3D
Vision
space.
OS.
So hitting the digital crown will always get the app drawer back in front of you, and then simply look at the icon you want and pinch your fingers together to select it and open that app. Scrolling is basically as you'd expect. You just kind of pinch and grab in the air and then pull as if it's on a string, and physics let you pull things through the air. It's pretty intuitive.
Está
It's
teniendo brillo en sus manos. O sea, estos pequeños glitches
responsive.
son porque yo entiendo que las manos son generadas en las Vision Pro. Eso es lo que he entendido
It's
con
fluid.
Texantos
Sometimes
y
it's
con
kind of
todos. A
bouncy
ver.
even. App. Scroll is basically as you'd expect. You
Se ve un pequeño glitch
and
como que en el croma.
add
Pero yo sé que no es
and
croma.
then pull.
Sí, se ve por un segundo.
Pull things through the air. It's pretty intuitive. It's responsive.
Se nota, ¿verdad? Esto es lo que digo. ¿Será que esto es una captura real entonces?
It's fluid.
¿Cómo se hace
Sometimes
eso?
it's kind of bouncy even. I would say the biggest adjustment is only being able to control exactly what you're looking at. And I don't think people realize how often they're controlling things that they're not exactly looking directly at with other computers and other UIs. But with this, you can look at the button to select it. And if you look at the next thing you're going to do, you're no longer controlling the button. You have to look exactly where you're trying to interact with things. It takes a few extra brain cycles to remember to always be looking
Claro.
exactly
Es una
at the thing you're
tecnología a la que nos
controlling.
vamos a
So
tener
when
que
you open a
acostumbrar.
window of a Vision OS app, like any one of the default Apple apps here, it locks into place. It's floating there. It kind of looks again
La
like an
sombra que
iPad
hace
app,
aquí
but
abajo.
very glassy, like this frosted glass around the UI sort of lets you see through a little bit to the color behind it. And it even sometimes casts a shadow on the ground in the correct Z space. So it really solidifies that it's floating in front of you. All of this makes it feel like the window is in the space around you. Then, if you look at the bottom of the window, you get a little bar. You can always just look at that bar and pinch to drag it around. So drag it forward, backward, anywhere you want in X, Y, and Z space, and then let go, and it just stays absolutely locked. And then you can look at either bottom corner to resize to make it bigger or smaller.
Hermoso.
And then finally, there's a little X at the bottom. You
A
select
salir.
that closes it. So that is the basics of Vision OS and just using an app. Now, this entire time, by default, and almost any time they can, pass-through is on, which means you have the headset on, but you can see with the cameras right through to everything around you. And I think this is where Apple really wants to normalize the term spatial computing, because it feels like augmented reality. It feels like you're always able to see the space around you. But technically, it's not actually AR because you are still looking at a reconstructed version through a camera feed of the world around you instead of the actual world around you. But maybe it's all just semantics. I will say this is the best pass-through of any VR headset I have ever used, and it's not even that close. Now, again, it's so hard to get this through a YouTube video. It does have screen recording built in, so I'm going to try
eso
to
es lo
use
que me
that, but
sorprende, que no
imagine
es...
putting a headset on
Tú no
and
estás
not
viendo
really
tu
feeling like you're
espacio, estás
looking at a
viendo una
screen with the real
recreación de tu
world
espacio,
because of the pixel density,
porque esa
because
es la
of the
gran
90 hertz
diferencia
refresh
entre,
rate, and because of the impressive
qué
dynamic
belleza,
range of the cameras and the
entre que
correctly
sea
adjusting
realidad
shutter speed, you
aumentada
just
o
almost
realidad
don't,
virtual.
you
Esto no es realidad
almost
aumentada,
just
esto
feel
es
like you're looking at the real world,
VR,
not
esto
through a
es
headset. Also, the
virtual
pass-through
reality.
is so close to real time
No es
that I
un
could
vídeo por el que
legitimately
puedes ver a través
interact with all
de,
kinds of
es
things.
una
I could catch
recreación de
items
todo lo que estás
flying at
viendo.
me. I even tried playing ping pong. It was easy, no hesitation. So officially, the R1 chip is doing all the processing of
Sí,
all this stuff
con un
and
poco
adjusting
de
the shutter speed
latencia
for
no
different lighting
podrías jugar
conditions
esto.
and always keeping pass-through latency under 12
Lo que no
milliseconds,
entiendo es
which
cómo es
is
que
the
él
lowest in
está
the industry. But it's really
grabando
combining that
o
with
está
how
capturando
close
esto.
to reality the colors and brightness and everything are that keeps it feeling kind of real. Basically, the only noticeable restriction is super close-up items and objects can get a bit blurry, and then you can't quite make out like really small or fine text, so you can't like read an email or tiny text on your phone in your hand. but you can absolutely text people or read your
Usa un
notifications
Samsung.
while keeping the headset on. If you've tried other VR headsets, you know how impressive that is. It's really good with the tech that exists now for VR headsets.
Me llamó la
But you can
atención
definitely still
que no reconoce el teléfono porque
put that on. If
entiendo que está hecho para reconocer las manos. Ok. Ok.
tried other VR headsets, you know how impressive that is. It's really good with the tech that exists now for VR headsets. But you can definitely still take the headset off and be like, oh, it's way brighter in here than I thought it was. Either way, that's all pass through. But if you ever want to fully immerse yourself, I mean, it is a VR headset after all you got to do is
Mover
rotate
la
this digital
crown
crown clockwise. Just keep turning it, and it will slowly dial your environment more and more into your field of view until you dial it all the
Es
way
que
up to
entonces
fully
sí es una
surrounding you.
captura real
So
esto.
all of the windows you might have had open will still stay stuck where they were, but everything you're doing is just on the moon
Ya no
now.
es
So yeah, there's a
realidad
couple
aumentada.
environments Apple has built in here.
Ah, sí
Most
te
of them
creo entonces.
relaxing scenic locations like in California somewhere, or one really nice one is Mount Hood with a little bit of rain falling. They're not quite photorealistic, but they're just short of photorealistic. Like they're the most realistic digital environments that I've seen. So then the last two big quirks of the UI. Control Center. So the only way to get to
A
Control
mí
Center
me
is to
importa
look
mucho
up,
más de
and
que
you
sea
can't just
útil y
look up,
cómodo
but you
a
have to
que sea
physically turn your head up and look at this
hiperrealista.
arrow that appears above you. So once you see that, you select that, and then you get your Control Center for things like
Ok, como
battery
el
life
slide
and
de toda la
notifications,
vida.
focus modes, and screen recording,
Ok, está
and
cool.
pairing to
Ahí
a
está el
Mac. But the
screen
other big
recording.
quirk
Entonces sí es
is
una captura real.
text
Ok.
input.
Sí es
So
screen
you might be
recording.
wondering, how does text input work
Captura de
with
pantalla,
no
pues.
physical controllers? So there's basically three ways to do this. So let's say you're in Safari and you want to go to mkbhd.com. You really want one of those shiny new Chevron hoodies for the rest of winter. Great. How do you do it? So the first
La
way is
promo.
to literally hunt and peck, poking the keys on the keyboard that appears in the air in front of you. So this
¿Puede
one's tough
hacer eso? ¿Se
because
puede
it
escribir?
literally only reacts to your pointer finger on each hand. So you actually can't
Pointing
type
finger.
fast
Solo
like with home
reacciona a
row
los
or
dedos
anything like that.
índices.
Not great. The second way, though,
Y no
I think
podemos
is actually
hacer
kind of
esto.
good. It's at least faster, which is looking at the key you want to interact with and then pinching to select it. So just looking around the keyboard like this and selecting the keys. And you might be surprised how fast you can type like this if you actually know your way around a
Proyecto
keyboard pretty
JC.
well. I actually prefer this to poking the virtual keys because I at least get a little bit of haptic feedback from my own fingers tapping together. But then in Safari, the last way to do it is literally to just look up at the microphone and say the URL out
Claro.
loud, mkbhd.com. And then it just hears you and goes to the site pretty quick if it's a URL that, you can actually say
Sí,
out
sí, sí,
loud.
sí, sí.
So, what can you actually do with this thing? Like now that we know what it is, it's the M2
Tiene un
chip,
M2.
a computer on your face with the displays and the lenses inside and all sorts of sensors everywhere. What can this
Eso
thing
me
actually
interesa.
do?
¿Qué es lo
And I
que
feel like the most
realmente
common way to
podés
phrase that is,
hacer con
what
esto?
is the killer app? Because we feel like we need some sort of justification to spend
Porque si no, solo es
$3,000,
otra manera de hacer
$4,000
lo
on
que
this
ya
thing.
hacemos.
Like applications
Pero hay algo que
made
ese
the
producto
iPhone what
lo
it
puedes
is
hacer
as we
solo
know it.
ahí.
Like
O
apps
sea, no la
made the
manera de
iPad.
hacerlo,
So
sino
what is the
algo
app
que solo se puede
situation
hacer ahí.
on the Vision Pro?
Porque,
So there are two types of apps on the Vision Pro, actually.
a ver,
The first is apps that are built specifically for the Vision Pro
Ajá.
to take advantage of its awesome experiences. And there are a few of those
jugar me
right
gustaría
now.
mucho ahí.
And then there are all of the other apps, which basically are iPhone and iPad apps that happen to be compatible because the developer didn't opt out. And the first kind is way cooler. So these are Apple's stock apps here that come with the Vision
Code.
Pro. And so these are all, of
Ah,
course,
practicando typing.
made just for Vision Pro. So they're going to have stuff that takes full advantage of what this thing is capable of. Apple Music is a pretty classic one. Like it has all the same functionality of any other Apple Music app, but in this super glassy frosted window and shows the colors of whatever's behind it. And you have the sort of sorting menu on the left-hand side instead of
Curious.
across the bottom. That's the basic layout. Same thing with
¿Para
the
qué
Notes
siempre
app
tiene
and
que
the
ser
Settings
conectada a
app.
internet?
Very
Eso no lo han
glassy,
dicho.
almost looking like an iPad app in the air, just rebuilt with this new material design. And then there's the media apps. So Apple TV and Disney Plus. They both come pre-installed.
Disney
They've
Plus,
built
Disney
entire
Plus,
environments
Disney
inside
Plus.
of them for watching media. And there's even a small
Adventure.
collection
¿Esto
of
qué es?
videos
Esto
on
es
the Apple TV
Apple
app
TV.
that are shot on a new proprietary format specifically for Vision Pro. So it drops
Avatar,
you
The Way
into a
of Water,
space
Mario
with a
Bros.
full 180-degree video, and
Napoleon.
Alicia Keys walks right up to you and starts singing right to your face. It's crazy. There's also the Photos app, which will let you look at like panoramic photos, for example, in this fully
Ok,
immersive
esto sí
view.
es
So
algo
you
que
can
solo se
blow them up
puede
to
hacer.
full screen, and then it gives you a bit of a parallax effect around the edges. So it feels like you're like looking into a window of your own photo and
Yes.
looking around. It's kind of incredible. And then there's also some other really fun third-party apps that I've tried that were built
Yes.
ahead of time. So Sky Guide, this is a good one. You can look around a real
Ah, está cool.
representation of the sky around you, where any
Oh,
of
eso
the
está muy cool.
constellations would normally be. You
Ok,
can
ese es
look at it a little longer and it'll
sí
pop it
responde a mi
out. You
pregunta. Es
can
algo que
pull it out of the
solo se
sky
puede hacer
to get
en
more information
las
about
Apple
it.
Vision.
It's a pretty great idea. There's another one called Jig Space, which it's a sick app. I don't know if I'd ever use it, but basically it lets you load 3D models into the space you're in and mess around with them.
Para
Take them
medicina
apart,
esto va a
view
ser
them in actual size.
increíble.
And this really takes advantage of
Para
how good the
arquitectura,
placement
para
lock is on the Vision
modelado,
Pro. And
para las
you can walk
artes.
around and really gets you a better understanding of the scale of things
Va,
that you
pero
don't get
sigue
to see up
siendo...
close very often. And then
Ver
Keynote
modelos
is another
3D ya
funny one.
podemos en
So
otros lados.
you can, of
Con el
course,
teléfono
go
puedo ver
through
modelos
and edit a
3D.
Keynote just
Con el
like normal
teléfono
if you want
puedo
to.
ver
But
las
then they've built
constelaciones.
this whole environment for practicing your
Puedo
presentation
hacer
skills.
Keynote.
So you press
Puedo
that,
usar
and it says,
PowerPoint
would you like to
con
go
la
to a
compu,
conference
con el
room
teléfono.
or the literal Steve
Con
Jobs
las
Theater?
Vision
So you
Pro
can
solo
rehearse
son una nueva
talking to your
manera
audience with your
de
keynote slides
hacerlas.
behind you. It is genuinely
Entonces voto todo lo
incredibly
anterior.
immersive. And there's already a bunch
Hay
more
algo
apps
que
like
sí se
this in
puede
the
hacer
App Store
solo
already
con
at
los Vision
launch
Pro.
that are specifically built for Vision Pro. So they'll take
Bueno, ¿y qué cosas solo se pueden hacer con el teléfono? ¿Tomar fotos?
various strengths. Now, are any of these
No, porque...
killer apps?
Bueno, no puedo tomar fotos con la Mac en teoría. Anuncio. Aprovechamos este anuncio para hablar. No puedo tomar fotos con la Mac prácticamente. No puedo dibujar o tomar notas con el iPhone.
Not
Eso
really.
solo
I mean, I
es
don't.
con el iPad.
If you're looking for any one of these to be the reason why you spend like $4,000 on this headset, I
¿Batería?
don't think we have that yet. But then at least there's all the
Cierto.
other
Está conectada a la compu, pero no
non-native,
está conectado al
but technically still
tomacorrientes.
compatible apps
A ver.
that are in the App Store. And these are going to look just like iPhone and iPad apps. Actually, there's a pre-installed folder on the home screen when you get this thing called
Gracias.
compatible apps. And there's a bunch of them from Apple here. They look exactly like iPad apps. I'm surprised actually that more of them aren't fully built out to take advantage of Vision Pro, but like Apple Maps is just the iPad app. And so it would be cool if there were some like fun augmented reality overlay walking directions type
Ese
stuff.
sería
But
chilero.
nope, it's all the exact same functionality
Ah,
that you
rayos.
find if you open this app on your iPad. And you can go to the App Store and search
Navegar
a bunch of the
el
names of apps
Google
you already
Maps
know and love and
o
find them by
jugar
name and grab them, and they'll
esto que
work
hoy
the
fue el
exact same way.
torneo,
Crazily
¿cómo se
enough,
llamaba?
though, there are already
GeoGuess,
some
jugarlo en
notable
el Vision Pro sería
exceptions.
muy cool.
No
Y hago así por el
Netflix app
gesto,
for the
como que
Vision
de
Pro,
moverte y
no
ver.
YouTube app for the Vision Pro, no Spotify app for the Vision Pro.
¿Qué dice? No hay Spotify. Ah, la madre.
App
Pero sí podemos entrar a la web. Como buen latinoamericano estoy acostumbrado a usar la web para Spotify.
has a kind of a contentious relationship with a lot of developers right now, especially some of the bigger ones. And so
Sí, pero lo del audio
made
espacial
the
no ha de estar
active
optimizado en la
choice
web.
to opt out. They're like, we don't want to be there.
Las
This
canciones
won't be a
con
big
Dolby
enough
Atmos y todo no creo
platform
que
to matter
estén
to us to justify the work. So
optimizados
they're
para
not there.
escucharlos
Now, I
en la
totally
web.
get it, but also now as a Vision Pro owner and someone who's using it, I'm like, it's kind of a bummer. I really wanted to be able to watch like a Netflix show offline, downloaded ahead of time, but you can't do that now. But at least for now, for the record, you can use the browser and anything that would work in the browser. So if you pull up Safari
lo
and
que
you get a full screen
decíamos de
4K
Spotify.
YouTube video
Podemos
going
abrir
in
Netflix
locked in
en,
space or even in an
en
environment,
Safari.
it looks great. It's razor sharp. Like I could totally watch YouTube videos like this, but you will definitely be missing like the features of having a dedicated app like video. Honestly, to me, the killer app of the Vision Pro isn't just an
Tuve la
app.
oportunidad
It's
y nunca lo usé.
actually the ecosystem. And we knew this was coming, but the second you log into a Vision Pro with your Apple ID, immediately it starts pulling all the services and all the stuff that you're used to on the other Apple.
En hacer eso,
And I said
Apple
this
es
before the Vision
experto.
Pro is announced. I was like, this is the most obvious strategy. Apple. There are lots of people out there who have never considered buying a VR headset that are considering
Just
this one
give me a
because they have an
second.
iPhone, and this is the one that works with the iPhone, and none of the others are particularly close. So all of your iMessages are already here. All of your photos are already and loaded up and backed up all your notes
Ya volví.
already at your fingertips. You already saw the Keynote app. But okay, easily my favorite feature is connecting to your
Trabajar
Mac.
con la Mac.
Right. So
Ajá.
anytime your Mac is in front of you and it's turned on, hit that arrow, and then there's this little icon to become
Lo
my Mac's
reconoce.
virtual
Qué
display.
belleza.
So I click that and then pick my Mac, and it pretty much instantly, it actually blacks out the display of my Mac and then
Porque
turns
tiene,
that display
¿qué
into
tiene
a
con
4K
Windows
window.
ahí?
Out the so I click that and then pick my Mac, and it
Sharing
pretty much
screen.
instantly, it actually
Tiene fondo de escritorios de Windows 10 en su Mac.
blacks out the display of my Mac and then turns that display into a 4K window inside of the headset. So now my keyboard and trackpad still work, even if it is a desktop. The keyboard and the trackpad still
A mí
control
me
everything,
gustaría,
and you can continue using it just like a normal computer, but with the ability to make your new 4K monitor as big or as small or close or far away as you
bueno,
want,
sí, sí,
which
sí,
is super
sí.
sick.
Yo iba a decir que a mí
And
me
then the
gustaría tener
bonus is
escritorios
you can
arriba,
still
pues
open
seguir
up and place
usando mi
other
main
Vision
screen,
Pro
mi
apps
pantalla
around your Mac
principal
computer.
que sale de
Have
la
your
compu,
Mac in the middle
pero
here,
usar
maybe you're
las
editing
demás
or
aquí
doing
arriba.
work on the Mac app,
Ay,
and then the
¿cuántas
Safari
pantallas
or
más podremos tener?
whatever else you want.
¿10
Next,
o solo una?
trackpad to control all of them.
Qué belleza. Si pues podemos hacer lo del
Is it
Universal
used for
Display, se
setup
llama
to
eso,
make
de
this
poder
happen?
mover
This
el
feels
mouse.
like the biggest game changer. Like
Ah,
a
la
really
gran. Sí, eso
compelling,
no lo había visto, está muy
futuristic
lindo.
feeling use headset to me.
Y reconocen dónde
Especially on
están
a
las
plane.
ventanas.
Oh my, I can't tell you how many times I've had an awkward conversation next to me skis. I'm editing a video of myself and it's kind of weird and hard to
Yo
explain.
lo estoy usando
But I'm
ahorita. Por
picturing
ejemplo,
putting the headset on, the display
yo
blacks
estoy
out,
usando una
but now I
pantalla
can do
externa
all
ahorita
the
que se
editing I
supone
want,
que
and I can
es...
make the screen as big as I want. So I've really enjoyed
¿Qué es esto? Supuestamente yo estoy usando uno de esos ahorita. Y tengo mi
if you
compu
want to control something,
y en el iPad
you have to be
tengo OBS
looking
aquí
at it.
compartido.
Again, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you
Entonces
try
yo
it,
sí
you'll
uso
see what I
esto
mean. And then also,
y sí me serviría. One monitor only. Solo se puede uno.
if you usually run like a dual display setup like I
Chafa.
do for Final Cut Pro,
Sí,
big
yo
preview
hago
on one
eso.
side, timeline on the other side, you can't do that. You have to use the big one monitor version of your setup. All right, so you might have
Decepción, hermano.
realized I've left one thing out this whole time. One thing, you could call it one more thing. Sure, it's one more huge, crazy
Como
thing.
que si no fuera
But it's kind
suficiente
of
lo
the
que hace, va.
defining characteristic of this product, and that is personas. So in all the
A ver,
advertising
contame de
you've
las
seen of
personas.
Vision Pro, there's these eyes on the outside of the headset that looks like they're kind of in like a pass-through, like in a dark astronaut helmet type of thing. Easily the most memed, most unique aspect of this headset, right? It's the only headset with an outward display, and I mean, it's
Sí,
very,
esto es lo que
very
quiere comprar.
prominent
No se ve así. Mentirosos. No se ve así.
in those videos. But in real life, as you've
Se ve así.
started to see from some of my footage, it is very different.
Propaganda,
And I
marketing.
think I
Soy
figured out
el-
why. So
la
first of
persona
all,
menos
it's not
indicada para quejarme
actually
de
see-through, right? There's a whole
mercadeo.
bunch of computer in between me and you right now. So the eyes aren't on
Se
the
ve
outside. It's
plasticoso
a
esto.
representation of my eye
Se ve
based on what all the
plasticoso,
sensors
no,
on the
no
inside
vidrio.
are seeing. It's reconstructing it on the outside. So those sensors are tracking at 90 frames per second, and they give you
90
Optic
frames
ID,
per
which
second.
is it's how you log into the headset and keep things secure. It's basically the same as Face ID or Touch ID. It's just looking at and identifying your eyes. And it also powers the one beta feature of this headset, which is personas, which is it's the most impressive and weirdest thing about this headset at the same time. I'm calling it
Okay.
right now. So the purpose of the eyes on the outside is really not for you, the wearer of the headset. In fact, you'll never see it, but it's for the people around you. So when you're in a pass-through mode, your eyes will shine through to indicate that you wearing the headset can see the person outside. So that right there is already pretty unique.
Sí, no va a ser el tonto enfrente tuya, hacer como que si no te estoy viendo.
But then when you're in something immersive and you
Ajá,
can't see
cuando
what's
es algo
around you, it
inmersivo,
covers up your eyes
bloquea.
with this sort of like a blue, purple, glowing animation. So that intuitively makes sense. You can see the eyes when they can see you.
Ok,
You
se
can't see the
puede
eyes
ver,
when they
pero
can't see you. But crazily enough, there's also a
99
feature
segundos
where
para actualizar.
have someone talking to you.
No. Espérame.
With
Actualizar esta
that,
noche.
they will kind of
Sí, ahorita no.
appear
Ahorita estoy
through the
reaccionando a este
fog
video.
of whatever immersive environment you're in. So you just start talking and looking in their direction. It detects that and sort of parts a little bit of a fog, and that person's eyes will show through the fog. It's pretty decent. It basically only shows
Uy,
one
qué miedo.
person
A
at
mí
a
me sale
time,
alguien así
and
y
when
le
this
pego
is
una patada.
happening on the outside of the headset, it shows a little bit of your eyes poking through the purple and blue glow. It's, as you can see, it's all working, but also I think it looks nothing like the eyes from the ad. So in an effort to make the eyes as presentable as possible, two things. First of all, this screen is actually behind a lenticular film, which I didn't even realize that from the initial media they've published. But if you've ever heard of that, it's sort of what gives it like this 3D depth. You might have seen this
Eso
on
sí lo
other
había
like
visto. Y creo que lo vi
holographic
con Tex
displays and
Santos.
stuff. But the point of that is to make the eyes appear to be sunken into the display, like on your
Entonces
actual
después, ajá,
face,
está dentro
instead
del
of like
dispositivo, no la
glued to the
pantalla
front of the
principal.
headset, which would look a little more weird. But then two, to represent your actual eyes, they've built in a way to scan in and create a digital representation of your face,
Qué
which is called
belleza.
your persona. And it looks like this. So, to get those
Sentí algo así
eyes
bien
on the
bonito ahorita.
outside of the
Qué,
Vision Pro
qué
headset,
lindo que ya
you have to
estamos
do
viendo
something
esto.
called registering your persona. This is how it creates the digital version of you that includes your eyes that will
Que
show up here.
te capturas,
So,
te pones
let's
así,
do that
¿no?
now. It's actually kind of a cool process. So I'm going to put it on, and hopefully the screen recording works so you can see
I'm
exactly
gonna
what
put
I'm
it
doing.
on.
I'll hit the digital crown. I'm going to go to settings, and you can do this when you first set it up, but I'm going to persona, and I'm going to hit get started. So let's refine
Manitas.
my hands real quick. This is capturing detail from the front of the headset of the hands in front of me. Once it's done with that, it's going to ask me to take it off. So, this is
When
how
you're
it
ready,
goes.
hold Apple Vision Pro at eye level.
Ok, suena.
Keep your arms and shoulders relaxed. Align your entire face within the frame.
My face shows up like Face ID.
Slowly turn
Esta es
your
la
head to the right.
representación en el mundo real más cercana que hemos tenido de que Siri nos
Now slowly
hable.
turn your head to the left.
Ahorita, esta cosa que estamos viendo ahorita es Siri.
Now tilt your head up.
Head up.
Then tilt your head down.
Qué lindo.
Next, let's capture your facial expressions. Smile with your mouth closed.
Ah, así.
Then make a big smile with your teeth showing. Now raise your eyebrows. Close your eyes for a moment.
Así, ojitos cerrados para los
Capture
parpadeos. Wow.
Put Vision Pro back on to continue.
Ok.
I will do that. So now I have a menu that says
Creating persona.
And it says
Persona.
It's in beta, and now
Ok.
there's my persona right there. Kind of uncanny. The hair is a little bit different, but the face...
La cara está muy bien. Y las expresiones.
Wow, okay. So there's different lighting. You can choose it to always be in studio lighting and always be in contour lighting. I'll just leave it at natural and hit next.
Quisiera ver una captura
You can change the
partida.
color temperature of
Sí, el
your
afuera
skin
y el
tone.
dentro.
Cool to warm. I think I'm around there.
Temperatura.
Brightness. Darkness. I think I'm around there, near the middle. Next. And then I can add glasses. So if I typically have glasses, which obviously I wouldn't be able to wear in the Vision Pro, you can still look like you
¿Cómo
have
vamos a usar
glasses
lentes allá adentro?
anytime
Vamos,
you're
como
on
que si
that
me lo fuera a
FaceTime
comprar.
call. And then next,
Save.
save. And that's it.
Save.
So I think now you should see my eyes.
No, está bien brilloso.
Maybe. And that's the thing. It barely shows up. You can barely see my eyes when I'm wearing the headset. Now, I've tried a couple other scans subsequently, so I've
A
tried
mí me
different
encanta
lighting
esto porque
conditions,
esto
I've
es la
tried
versión
different
más chafa que
backgrounds,
vamos a
simple
ver de sus
backgrounds,
productos.
tried
La
different
versión
shirts and
más,
things like that. It doesn't really
más
ever
fea
appear any brighter. I think if
que
you
vamos
have
a
a
ver de
darker
los,
skin
de
tone
los
like me,
Vision
just
Pro.
don't expect the eyes to show up very brightly on the outside of the headset. It's pretty subtle. Even when it does show up, It's a little weird looking. The eyes are a little too far apart
Sí, si no hubiera
sometimes.
tantos
They're a
brillos, si no
little
estuviera en
dim.
un
You see like one
estudio de
eye at a time.
grabación
It's
con 17.000
kind of weird.
luces
But that
enfrentes,
persona, though,
tal vez se miraría
that is some
justo como
pretty
lo
interesting
prometen.
stuff. It's crazy that this is actually a real thing being shipped. Like first Meta started doing it, now Apple's doing this. This is, again, it's technically in beta, so I don't know, there's room for improvement, but it still works. But as of right now, I feel like this is both incredibly impressive and slightly unsettling. Like it's very impressive that this thing, this headset I'm wearing on my face is tracking all these little micro expressions and little movements from my eyes and my cheeks and my mouth and everything. But at the same time, it's just not quite human. It's right at the edge of the uncanny valley.
Sí, sí,
Of,
sí. Y
I'm
a mí
not
me
looking at a
gustaría
person.
más que fuera así,
So,
a que fuera
but the crazy
hiperrealista.
part is,
Porque
you
me
can
da
now
mucha
use this
ansiedad,
persona
diría la Mara.
as your camera feed for
Me hace
any
sentir bien
apps in Vision
incómodo.
Pro that require a
Cuando
front-facing camera,
parece realista,
like
pero sabes que no
FaceTime.
es realista.
And so I've been using FaceTime a few times in the Vision Pro, and it is, technically speaking, incredible. So I've made a few FaceTime calls in the past few days with some fellow reviewers who you'll probably recognize from their personas who are
No,
also
no los
testing the
reconozco.
Vision Pro. And universally, once we all got past the shock of, oh my God, it's you, it looks like a digital version of you, this is crazy, I've never seen anything like this before. Once we got past that, there is a ton happening here. So you can see the
Sí, se pueden
FaceTime
poner un
windows
fondo, qué bonito.
literally appear as just that. They're just like glassy windows floating in space with people looking through them. And then the angle that you look into the window is going to match the angle that they see you looking at them. Meaning, if we're all in Vision
Ok.
Pros on this call,
Y no siempre es recto.
unlikely, but hear me out. If we're all in Vision Pros and you've got a bunch of people on this FaceTime call, so there's somebody to the left and somebody to the right. If I look to the person and make eye contact with the person to the right, the person to the left sees
Va a
like
ver
the
que te
side of my
volteas.
head because I'm looking at somebody else. That's
Eso está
already
muy
pretty cool.
bien.
And then the same thing is true for hand gestures. So we tried this out. Turns out you can reach out and make hand gestures that are
pues,
tracked
eso no
by
se me
the
había-
cameras
no se me
in
había
this
pasado
bubble
por
in
la
front of
cabeza.
you, and they show up at the correct angle towards the person that you're gesturing at. So not towards everybody else on the call. Oh, wait. That's okay. Good test. So wait, Justine, do you see this?
Yes.
And
I
Brian,
don't see that. I don't see that, Marquez.
Now wait. So now, Brian, do you see this?
Now I can see that, Marquez.
And then on top of that,
Okay, eso está
spatial
cool.
audio here is incredibly well developed. So again, you're on the call. The voice of the person to the right comes from the right side. The voice of the
Sí,
person to the
el
left comes from
spatial
the left.
audio. Wow,
But
qué
also,
belleza.
you can just pick up and move the window
Qué
around,
lindura.
and that angle will match where the people are in the room and where their sound and video comes from. If I put you on the other side of the room, it sounds like they're further away. And if I turn up the environment and
Eso
bring
es
them
algo que
into
solo se
like
puede
the
hacer en el Vision
moon
Pro.
or some other
Tener esa
3D space, it
interactividad
actually sounds
en una
much more like I'm in a
videollamada.
gigantic space with no echo
Eso sí solo se puede
versus in the
hacer
actual
en el
room.
Vision Pro.
It's all very
No en
subtle
Zoom,
but very
no en
well
Skype,
considered.
no
So
en
once you're
Google
in this a
Meets.
while, you start to notice all these little smaller things. Again, it's not quite human-like. It's not like looking at a video feed of a human face, but it is still like it has a lot of like
Y
this would be
está
the
re
best
bien.
avatar anyone's ever made in 2K. Like no one's ever done a 2K face scan and had it look this good, but it's still not as good as like a perfect reality. You've heard the uncanny valley thing before. I think the number one weakness for the avatars or the personas that I've seen is hair. So basically everyone I've talked to has
sí,
like
pues.
a
Muy
frozen lump of
plasticoso y
hair
así.
instead of flowing realistic hair. And
Claro,
that's true about
pero
all
es que-
flowing things. Like
es que
however your
¿qué
hair
pedimos
was when
también
you did the
nosotros?
scan, it's frozen that way.
El nivel de
And so
perfección
is
que
any
pedimos
necklace you're wearing,
es-
whether it's crooked or not.
No.
Or I guess
No es
technically
posible
also
alcanzar
any
ahorita,
makeup you had on, or
ahorita.
however you looked when you did the scan. Maybe that could be a
Démosle
good
un
thing.
par de
Maybe you did a
versiones.
scan when you were looking all
Nos vamos a
dolled up, and then
sorprender.
you get on a 7 a.m. call and you still look perfect, even though you look like you just woke up in real life. So I guess there's that too.
Ok,
Anyway,
eso sí
all
es
that
algo
is
que
to
solo
say,
se puede hacer con el
FaceTime.
Vision Pro.
FaceTime is the most
Bueno, yo no tengo problemas con mi pelo.
well
Creo que tengo el
thought
pelo
out, like, most
perfecto para usar
futuristic
las Vision Pro.
Vision Pro experience. It just is. So
Qué
I'll end
belleza.
this video with this. Now you know what it's like to use and operate the Vision Pro. But there's still a lot more to consider when actually considering if you should buy and own this thing, from the use cases to
Aunque yo
the things
quisiera,
that
no
work
la
well
puedo
and don't
comprar.
work well, the philosophy behind it, the
Y no solo por
prices,
plata.
all of that stuff.
En
That's what's
Guatemala.
going to be for my full review. Like, there are parts of this thing that are
Si alguien de
absolutely
Guatemala compra los
amazing,
Vision Pro,
unparalleled,
por
best I've
favor,
ever seen.
déjame
But the reason it's
probarlas.
so
Por
interesting is
favor, déjame
because it's
probarlas.
actually a young category. Like, we're
Préstámelas,
so
yo
used
voy a
to
donde
this
estés,
slow,
por favor.
boring iteration in mature categories like smartphones and laptops.
Nomás por
And you
la
always see the comments
experiencia.
talking about how tech is so boring. But now they're actually jumping into something risky, and it's actually fun. And there's downfalls and flaws, and it's fun to actually weigh the pros and cons. So I'll be expanding on all these way more in the full review, but I'll leave you with this. I've got my upsides and downsides.
No sabía
to Vision
que
Pro.
Mark no
It's been a
usaba,
week.
no usaba
Upsides,
iPhone.
some of the stuff that's the best I've ever seen in a headset: immersion, placement in space, eye tracking and hand control,
Empezó la música del outro.
pass-through, ecosystem, and spatial audio. And the downsides: weight and comfort, the eyes on the outside, app selection right now, battery life, and price. So the full review's in the works.
Poquitos,
Definitely get
Poquitos,
subscribed to be among the first to see that when it drops. Either way, till the next one, thanks for watching. Catch you later. Peace.
Catch you later. Y nosotros te veremos a ti. Y nosotros te veremos a ti. En esta cuenta no estaba suscrito. Me voy a suscribir. Y por supuesto que toma mi like. Aunque esté mal esto. Qué belleza. Y tú y yo tenemos una tarea. No sé cómo le vamos a hacer. No sé cómo le vamos a hacer, pero vamos a conseguir probar algún día las Apple Vision Pro. Excelente. Qué lindura.